Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 7th, 2021 meeting of the Lake Havasu City Planning and Zoning Commission. Would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'm going to mix up the order a little bit today. Mr. Morris, Correspondence and Announcements.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. We're going a little bit out of order today. We have some new commission members and some reappointed members. So just want to recognize Commissioner Jim Harris has been reappointed to the board, to the Planning Commission. And we have two new members. The first is Gabrielle Melody, and the other one is David Diaz. These are new appointees by the City Council to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I want to thank all the commission members, the newly appointed, the reappointed, and the current members for your service. It's an invaluable role for the city, so thank you very much. And that concludes staff's announcements. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the roll call now, please.
Commission members Doug Hardy, Susanna Ballard, Matthew Mitchell, Sam Levin,
Here.
David Diaz, here. Don Bergen, here. Dan McGowan, here. Chad Nelson,
Here.
Gabrielle Medley, here. Chair Jim Harris,
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions to those minutes by commissioners? Anybody at all? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Approve the minutes as written.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Bergen. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
And a second by Mr. McGowan. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, let's call for the question.
Your first vote.
Has everybody been able to make their?
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda, let's fill the dais here and maybe invite Ms. Ballard up to the commission here. And you'll be filling Mr. Hardy's spot. Okay, the next item on the agenda today is election of officers. And Mr. Morris, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, every year the the Planning and Zoning Commission elects a new, doesn't have to be a new, but elects officers, a chairman and a chair and a vice chair. It's up to the commission who they'd like to appoint to the chair and vice chair. It can be the same as the current one. It can be a new chair or vice chair. So up to the commission to decide how they would like to move forward on that. So at this point, I would presume we'd be open for any nominations for the chairman at this point.
I'd like to make a motion to re-elect our chairman and make Chad Nelson second in command.
All right, these are two separate agenda items, but we typically sometimes we run them together, but on the agenda, it's first for the chairman and then the vice chair.
Yeah, let's do these separate, please.
So for the chair, it sounds like we've got a motion for Jim Harris to continue as chair. Is there a second? All right, we have a motion by Mr. McGowan and a second by Mrs. Ballard. Anyone else have any comments or discussion? If not, then please cast your vote. Thank you.
Quick question. If I'm supposed to have a mechanism available to me here to vote at this time, I don't, and I don't have video either. which isn't a problem, but all I have is a blank screen and a list of participants.
Mr. Levin, right now you're as an alternate, so you're not among the 7 that are voting at this point. So if you can't see the screen, then maybe that's something, a technical issue you need to work through. But at this point, the voting's open only to the 7 seated commissioners at this point. Thank you.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, everybody.
And now the vice chair, election of vice chair. Same process. Is there anyone who would like to nominate?
I'd like to make a motion to elect Mr. Nelson as vice chair.
All right, we have a motion for Mr. Nelson as the
I'll
vice
second
chair
that.
and a second for Mr. Harris. Any discussion? If not, then please cast your vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Nelson. And if I haven't said it already, I'd like to welcome our 2 new members, Gabrielle and David. Welcome. Okay, moving right along, we've done the minutes, correspondence announcements we've already done. So let's get to the public hearing portion of this meeting. The first item on today's agenda is ID 212875. It's a request for a preliminary commercial subdivision plat for Sunset Storage Lofts at 1050 Aviation Drive, Tract 2290, Block 2, Lot 15, for 18 storage units in 2 buildings in the Light Industrial District, LI. Mr. Morris, your presentation, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. The subject property is located, it's about 1.22 acres. It's located on Aviation Drive, a little bit north of Kiowa Avenue, as shown on this location on area map. The property is currently zoned light industrial along with all the properties around it. The proposed condominium subdivisions for 18 storage units in 2 buildings. The condominium plat provides the property owner opportunity to sell the individual units. Design review has been performed and building permits are issued for this project and is currently in construction. With that concludes staff's presentation. Open any questions. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions of staff by commissioners on this item? Any questions of staff? Hearing none, I'll open it up to the public, or not to the public, to the applicant. If you'd like to make a statement, please state your name for the record.
Lee Johnson, APL Surveying. Morning, Commissioners. Here, if you guys have any questions, technical questions of the plat.
Any questions of the applicant? Pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thanks, Commissioners.
At this point, I will open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item, either pro or con? Anybody at all? Going once, going twice? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing portion, bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends approval of Land Use Action ID 21-2875, a preliminary commercial condominium subdivision plat for Sunset Storage Lofts at 1050 Aviation Drive, Tract 2290, Block 2, Lot 15, for 18 storage units in 2 buildings in the LI district. Thank you.
All right, we are at the table for discussion. Any discussion of this item? Anybody at all? We are at the table for discussion and/or a motion. I will entertain a motion. Mr. Nelson.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ID 21-2875 with staff's recommendations.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Ms. Ballard. So we have a motion by Mr. Nelson, seconded by Ms. Ballard to approve item number 21-2875 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion by commissioners? Anybody at all? All right, let's call for the question. And you have to go back to your other screen, push the red button.
Motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations and good luck. Next item on today's agenda is ID 21-2876. This is a request for a preliminary subdivision plat for Lagavia's Subdivision 2080 Swanson Avenue, Tract 2268, Block 10, Lot 11, creating a 9-unit residential subdivision in the residential Uptown Mcculloch Main Street District, R-UMS. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. The subject property is about a little over a half acre. It's located at the northwest corner of Swanson Avenue and Mulberry and near downtown Mcculloch. The complex will have one access off of Mulberry Avenue. It's bordered by multiple family projects to the south and the west. Across the street, actually, and it's zoned RUMS across Swanson and to the south and east and west. Across Swanson Avenue to the north, it's zoned mixed use UMS for the Uptown, the Main Street District. The project is for a total of 9 units, 9 individual units, and then a common area, parcel A, and parcel B would be a shared area with potential amenity of a swimming pool. The setbacks for the project overall for each of the lots will be based on their individual footprints, and they of course meet all the building and separation requirements. Building plans have not been submitted for this project yet. It will have to go through design review and of course the building and fire and safety permitting processes. Since this will not have any public streets, but it will have sewer and water running through the common parcel, so it will require a development agreement from the developer, between the developer and the city about who's responsible for sewer and water lines on the property. They of course will have a property owners association to manage and maintain the private drives and any improvements on the property. So that concludes staff's presentation. Open to any questions the commission may have. Thank you.
All right, we're at the table for questions by commissioners. Ms. Melody, I see you reaching. No? Anybody? Questions? Okay, let's take it to the applicant. Is the applicant present? Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Lee Johnson, APL Surveying. Like Mr. Morris said, it's a 9-lot subdivision with 2 common areas. One's just the common drive. The other is a common amenity, pool, clubhouse, whatever they decide to build over there. They haven't decided yet. Here to answer any question you guys might have.
Any questions of the applicant? Ms. Ballard?
Yeah, the question is, what's the square footage of each of these average going to be?
And that's Mr. Diaz.
Far as lot size, let me grab my,
The actual buildings, yeah.
I think it's listed on there, isn't it?
yeah, well, that's, what's listed on there is the lot sizes.
Lot size.
Which they range anywhere from just under 15 to the largest ones just under 1,800 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
They are still in process working out the floor plan, so they don't have a actual square footage of the
For the buildings.
units, buildings yet.
And parking spaces?
All in these units have their own individual garages.
Okay. 2-car garages?
No.
No, they
single?
are single car garages.
Okay, all right. I was just asking because, we have some parking issues on,
Yeah,
that area.
and a lot of that will also be handled when they come back through design review
Perfect. Okay.
for the buildings and everything with city staff.
thank you.
Just for the record, Mr. Morris, what would parking requirements be for a parcel such as this, for a plan such as this? And I'm specifically going to guest parking.
Yes, parking, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Parking requirements for this property, since it's in the residential UMS, it requires one covered parking space per unit, which would be taken care of by the single-car garages if they're proposed for each of these individual units. In that zoning district, there's not a requirement for additional parking. The idea was to make that more of a encourage pedestrian connections and orientation with the downtown, and so not require as many parking spaces to try to encourage people to maybe not have a second car.
Just wanted to get that on the record.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Ballard, did you have a question earlier?
Yes, it's a single driveway, and parcel A will be a common ingress, egress, and emergency vehicle parcel, which will allow everyone to access all the units. The main drive coming in is a 36-foot wide drive coming in off of Mulberry, and then I think at the narrowest point it gets down to 24. So it's the minimum width of a two-way traffic.
Any other questions of the applicant?
Yes, I have a question.
Mr. McGowan?
Parking, Mulberry, is there parking allowed on Mulberry from that corner going west?
On Mulberry?
Yeah, for guests now, for guests.
I believe that whole area is, the curbing's not painted red, so there will be allowed parking on Mulberry.
How about on Swanson?
I believe there's no parking allowed on Swanson after they
That's
just
what I
redid
think,
all
yes.
the
Yeah.
street improvements, yeah.
So there will be some for guests
Yes.
on Mulberry. I don't know if that's enough, but anyway.
code doesn't-
And when they get into the development stage, they'll have to do all the street widening and improvements on Mulberry to bring it up to city code.
Good.
But to answer Mr. McGowan's question, the code does not require any guest parking.
Correct.
And a project like this cannot count on any street parking anywhere in town. That's not, we don't govern
Okay,
street
thank you
parking.
for correcting me.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I'll now open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item, either pro or con? Anybody at all? Hearing and seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion, bring it back to the table for staff's recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends approval of Land Use Action ID 21-2876, a preliminary subdivision plat for Lago Villas Subdivision, 2080 Swanson Avenue, Tract 2268, Block 10, Lot 11, creating 9-unit residential subdivision in the residential Uptown Mcculloch Main Street District, RUMS, with the following condition. Provide a development agreement for review with the final plat submittal that includes city sewer and water services. Thank you.
All right, we are at the table for discussion and/or a motion. I see you reaching, Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a brief discussion since we have some new members up here and talk about overlays a little bit, about overlay districts, just real quick. This is a residential Upper Mcculloch overlay, which allows higher density and also much
Excuse me,
higher height
excuse me,
restriction.
Chad. Mr. Morris, would you put up the zoning map, please? There you go. Thanks.
Yeah, so
It
if
might
you-
help, Chad.
Yeah, thank you. So, when they redid the general plan in 2016, they created, overlays that would supersede some of the old zoning. for higher density and to really complement the downtown district. And some of these subject properties that we're going to talk about today have this overlay. And in planning and zoning, it's always difficult to make some of these decisions because you're hoping that with these overlays that we've worked pretty hard to get, that people are going to follow that zoning, which would allow 42-foot height restriction, 10-foot off the sidewalk, and RUMS is really, it's really designed to have almost like a San Francisco type look where you walk right out on the sidewalk and kind of park in the back and stuff like that. And this doesn't really go with that concept. Although it is nice to see someone that wants to purchase the land and develop on it. So it's always difficult in our seat because you don't want to hold anybody back from what they want to do to develop. But in the same scenario, we're running out of land. So with new members on the seat, I would encourage you to go through and look at the general plan and look at all these overlay districts and what can be done in them to help make decisions and things like that. The only other discussion that has kind of already been brought up, and I don't know if we want to further discuss it, but it doesn't look like there's a lot of parking on this. I don't know if you can bring up it doesn't look like there's really any parking for guests. And that sidewalk is already in on Mulberry, isn't it?
I don't recall whether the sidewalk's in on Mulberry. Sidewalk would normally be a requirement, so if it wasn't there, it would need to be installed. And you're correct, the parking requirements for the RUMS does not require any additional guest parking. Again, it only requires one parking space per dwelling unit.
So it looks like there could be, some parking there on Mulberry for maybe 10 cars or less up and down the street. So that's the only other part of the discussion I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anybody else? Discussion on the item? We are at the table for discussion and/or a motion. Commissioners? Anybody? We're going to need a motion to go forward.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ID 212876, a request for a preliminary subdivision plot for Lagos Villas subdivision, 2080 Swanson Avenue, tract 2268, block 10, lot 11, creating a 9-unit residential subdivision in the residential Uptown Mcculloch Main Street District R, UMS, and all attachments.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McGowan, a second by Mr. Diaz, to approve ID 212876 with staff's recommendation. Any other discussion on this item? Hearing none, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 5-2.
Congratulations. Good luck. Next item on today's agenda is ID 212877. It is a request for a preliminary subdivision plat for Skyview Estates subdivision, 1776 Swanson Avenue, tract 2304, block 1, lots 7 and 8, creating an 8-unit residential subdivision in the residential, commercial, and health district, R-CHD. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. This property is about 1.1 acres. It's located on the south side of Swanson Avenue, near the end of Capri Lane, right across from Capri Lane. We'll have an access off Swanson Avenue. It's bordered by residential developments on each side and behind it. And then across Swanson Avenue is the Mojave County Library and the old Kmart Shopping Center. The property is currently zoned RCHD, that's Residential Commercial Health District. The properties on that side of Swanson Avenue are also zoned Residential CHD. And then across Swanson, there's zoned Commercial Health District, which is the commercial transect for that health district. The subject property is proposed to be divided into 8 lots, 8 individual lots with common area, which would be driveway and where utility lines would run. The building plans have not been submitted at this point. It's not gone through design review or the building permit process. There will have, since they won't have a public street in here, again, we'll go through a development agreement for the maintenance and service of any sewer and water lines, city sewer and water lines in that public area. Of course, they'll have a property owners association to manage the common elements of the property. And this is an area like Commissioner Nelson had brought up earlier. This is one of those newer zoning districts that have an emphasis on higher density and buildings and pedestrian connections to the street. That concludes staff's presentation. Open any comments you may have. Thank you.
All right, we are at the table for questions. Any questions by commissioners of staff?
I have one question. I'm sure
Mr.
the
McGowan.
answer on this plan, the garage will be included in each lot.
The initial consultation, after consulting with the applicant, yes, the garages will be facing the internal driveway going through the property. There will be no garages facing Swanson Avenue. They'll all be internal to the property.
And there's enough room between buildings getting in and out of a garage?
There needs to be a minimum of at least 24 feet between for maneuvering area. And yes, this plan indicates it'll have more than adequate room for that 24 feet.
Any other questions by commissioners?
Yeah, I have a question.
Ms. Ballard?
Again, this that is on Swanson Avenue. Is there any public parking allowed on Swanson Avenue?
I don't believe there's any in this area of Swanson. In portions of Swanson there is. I don't recall whether this one has it or not. I think there's some up. There's condos that you go further up. Let me see if I go to a different plan here. I think there's parking on Swanson. I don't think there's parking on Swanson here, but I think farther up there is, but it's on the other side of these condos, as I recall.
Right, there's no parking where the red there at all.
Now, something to keep in mind, if you don't mind, this is a little different zoning district than the one we talked about previously. This zoning district requires them to provide the parking, the covered parking space, and then based on the number of bedrooms in each unit, additional parking and guest parking. So when this goes through design review for the process, we'll review it for all those requirements. So this one won't be, this one will have more parking required because it's a different zoning district. The other zoning district we talked about is closer to the downtown, and that's where there's more of an emphasis on trying to get more pedestrian connectivity. This one's a little farther away, but it has higher parking demands than that previous one. So just to explain that a little more.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, hearing none, I will ask if the applicant is present. And if you'd state your name for the record, Mr. Johnson.
Lee Johnson, APL Surveying. To address a couple of the questions that have already been asked. The developer is currently working on 4 different floor plans on here, 2 that will fit the 4 lots up front that is facing Swanson. All the floor plans that are currently being looked at are multi-story, the lower story being garage and some living. The ones along Swanson, the garages, of course, will be accessed from the back through the drive aisles, but they're setting up the front of those units to more look like the front of a residential. So it won't be that you are looking like a square of a back of a house. So they'll have, patio, entryway, everything that accesses right off to the sidewalk off of Swanson to give the feel of if you're walking on the sidewalk, you can turn and go straight in. And the rear ones will have larger RV garages and 2-car garages underneath and then living up top. The other thing that in this one's a little different than the prior one, we kind of applied like a R1 setback to the front of all these. So out of the interior common drive area, all the units will be setting an additional 20 feet back from the common drive, which will allow additional parking and everything in front of the units, in front of the garages or wherever. We have worked with Unisource on rerouting some of the electric in this area. They're all in favor of the reroute. And then here to answer any other questions you guys might have.
Any questions of the applicant? Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
All right, thank you, commissioners.
Okay, I'll open it up to the public. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item, either pro or con? Anybody at all? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends approval of Land Use Action ID 21-2877, a preliminary subdivision plat for Skyview Estates Subdivision, 1776 Swanson Avenue, Tract 2304, Block 1, Lots 7 and 8, creating an 8-unit residential subdivision in the Residential, Commercial, and Health District, RCHD, with the following condition. Provide a development agreement for review with the final plat submittal that includes city sewer and water services. Thank you.
All right, any questions by commissioners? We are at the table for discussion and or a motion. Anybody at all? Ms. Ballard?
I make a motion that we approve ID 21-2877, a request for a preliminary subdivision plat for Skyview Estates Subdivision, 1776 Swanson Avenue, Tract 2304, Block 1, Lots 7 and 8, creating an 8-unit residential subdivision in the Residential, Commercial, and Health District.
I second.
Who was the second? Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Ballard, a second by Mr. Nelson to approve item number 21-2877 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion on the item? Seeing none, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations and good luck. Next item on today's agenda, ID 21-2881. It's a request for a commercial use permit for 2781 and 2791 Maricopa Avenue, Tract 2211, Block 1, Lots 12 and 13, to allow a new 70-foot communication monopole with the existing UNS Electric Havasu substation in the commercial Southgate District. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. The subject property is located on Maricopa Avenue. It's owned, of course, by the Unisource Electric company, I suppose. So it's at Maricopa, just a little bit east of Acoma Boulevard. There's a wash beside it to the east, and then, of course, Maricopa and Highway 95 to the south. The subject property is zoned commercial Southgate District. That's the same zoning as the properties that front Maricopa and across the highway on Sweetwater Avenue. There's an alley that butts the property at the rear, and then near the alley, near the wash. The properties on the the north of the alley are zoned residential, multiple family residential, and developed as such. Here's the older aerial that shows the subject property. Here's Maricopa Avenue, here's the wash, here's the alley that wraps around this property, and the residential properties at the rear. Here circled in red is an example of the monopole they want to put up. It's a 70-foot tall monopole. It's not It's more like a utility power transmission pole as opposed to a standard cell tower. This is a little unusual. It's not really a typical cell tower, but it meets the definition per our cell tower, our cell development code. So staff determined it needs a conditional use permit. The existing site has a number of, a lot of equipment, electrical transformers, the switching stations. It has a number of power poles already there. These dark colored poles are 65 feet tall. The requested pole is 70 feet. So it's very similar to what's there right now. And frankly, I don't seem like it would seem like many more poles. There's a lot of poles there at the moment. Here's the site plan for the property. So again, the alley to the top and the wash to the right and Maricopa Avenue on the south here. They're proposing the pole to be located next to an existing shelter, a 70-foot monopole. This is one site of 10 within Mojave County. What the purpose of this monopole is for communication for them only. It's to communicate between their different stations. There are, like I said, there's 10 they're proposing for Mojave County. This is the only one that we're aware of within the city limits. And I believe they transmit and communicate with a tower up on Crossman Peak with this. That concludes staff's presentation. Actually, one thing, the request does meet all the requirements of the development code for cell towers. And with that, concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
We're at the table for questions of staff. I'll start. This is strictly for internal use, and this is for microwave communications, I presume?
Some sort of communications. The applicant is attending via Zoom. If we have more technical questions,
I would suggest that this is probably for communications for switching on the switchyard.
In their application, they made reference it's for internal use only. It's not for any external. It's only for their internal use.
So there's not going to be any other cell equipment on this?
No.
Okay. That's the end of my questions. Anybody else? Okay. Is the applicant present?
Yes, this is Leslie Carpenter from Unisource Energy Services, and we also have Oscar Vasquez, who is the engineer on the project.
So Leslie, I have a question of you, just to confirm my analysis of it. You're going to use this for microwave communications for the switchyard?
This is actually a radio. We are updating to industry standard our radio communications for our crews, as I understand it.
Oh, okay. That makes sense too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? Thank you, Leslie, I appreciate it.
I have a quick question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Diaz?
Is this going to replace any of those other existing towers, or just is to be in addition to?
This will be in addition to, we currently do not have a communication tower there on the site. We've got a very old analog radio system.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions of the applicant? All right, thank you, Leslie.
Okay.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I invite anybody of the public to come forward and speak either pro or con. Anybody at all? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing portion, bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends approval of item number 21-2881 for a conditional use permit for 2781 and 2791 Maricopa Avenue, Tract 2211, Block 1, Lots 12 and 13, to allow a new 70-foot communication monopole within the existing UNS Electric Havasu substation in the CSGD district as shown on the site plan. Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, we are at the table for discussion and/or a motion. Any further discussion? Then I will entertain a motion. Mr. Nelson.
I'll make a motion to approve ID 21-2881 with staff's recommendations.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Nelson, second by Mr. McGowan, to approve item number 21-2881 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion on the motion?
We just wish it was a Suddenlink tower.
Duly noted.
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? Let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations and good luck. Next item on today's agenda, item number ID 212880, is a request for a zone change for 2860 Jamaica Boulevard South, tract 2271, block 10, lots 8, 9, and 10, from limited commercial, which is C1, to limited multifamily, which is R3. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you again. The subject property is about an acre. It's located on Jamaica Boulevard, just south of Chemehueve Boulevard. And then there's an alley that wraps around this property to the south and west, or excuse me, south and east. Generally, the site slopes down about 13 feet from the east to the west. As far as the zoning for the area, all around it on the south, east and west, it's zoned R3, which is the requested zoning. Abutting it to the north is an existing property that's zoned C1 that's developed as a dentist office. And then farther north from that is also zoned R3 like the rest of the neighborhood. A little bit of a background on the zoning for this property. This whole block was initially zoned C1 for years and years. The dentist office developed there in the middle. In 2017, City Council approved a rezone for these northern 3 lots were here, to rezone those to R3. Those have been developed, or in the process of being developed as residential project. This request is for these 3 lots on the south side of that block to be rezoned to the same R3. The general plan, here's the general plan for the city. This is the general plan is a long-term goal of the city, for the development of the city. This is one aspect of the general plan, which is the land use map. The subject property is down here near Chemehueve and Jamaica, and this yellow color is a residential zone, residential general plan land use designation. Now, when the city was originally subdivided and zoned, there were a number of commercial nodes scattered around the city. It was common practice back in the 60s and 70s to create neighborhoods with small centrally located commercial nodes to address neighborhood commercial needs. The idea for these commercial nodes was to provide local business services within the different neighborhoods. Over the past 50 years, the demand for these neighborhood commercial nodes has not really been realized in Havasu, and most of the commercial nodes have remained undeveloped. In the 2016 general plan, which is what this map is from, many of the different areas that these outlying areas, those nodes were updated or changed from a commercial node to a residential. And the general plan supports this request to rezone from commercial use to a residential use. There are several lots around town in the same situation that have already been rezoned, and staff anticipates that trend will continue. As an example, so here's the subject property. Another example is on Arizona Avenue. There's a C1 node that has been, both ends of it have been rezoned to multiple, R2, I believe. In the middle remained the commercial. Up on Kiowa Boulevard, where it starts sweeping around North Kiowa in the area of Bison, that was a commercial node that's totally gone to residential now. Up on Palo Verde near Bentley Boulevard, there's also a node that was commercial and has been mostly developed now and rezoned to residential. And then there's some on Anita Avenue that was approved a while back by the recommended approval by the commission for some rezone. So there are a number of commercial nodes that were around town that are zoned that way, but the general plan suggests the long-term goal is to get those changed over, to residential uses. And this is one of those commercial nodes. With that, this concludes staff's presentation. Open to comments and questions. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions by the commissioners of the staff? Mr. Bergen.
Would you explain again what the small piece of property to the north?
Go ahead and turn your microphone on. There you go.
Would you explain again what the small piece of property to the north is?
Okay, I'm looking at the zoning map right here.
Yeah, the one right above it, that there.
This right here is an existing commercial use. It's dentist office. It's a dental office right here. So to the north of that is residential that was in the past few years rezoned to residential. And then here's the dentist office that exists right now. And then C1 to the south, which is the subject property, asking to rezone to the residential R3.
Okay, I was just wondering about having that commercial in between the two residentials.
Well, that's this is the area in transition going from the previously approved general plan for a commercial node. Now it's going to the 2016 plan for residential in that area. So it's just one of those things where it's a leftover parcel. It's developed, obviously, it continued to develop that way. It's legal non-conforming. It's fine. It's zoned C1. It has all the development rights to C1. So it doesn't conform to the general plan, but for zoning and development code standards, it's fine. It's not even, I shouldn't say it's not legal non-conforming. It's legal conforming to its zoning district. So it's fine the way it is.
Thank you.
In general, then, this is a reduction in zoning from C1 down to R3.
Yeah, generally we would say that's a down zoning, less intense use going from
And the
commercial
property
to residential.
property to the north of that houses the dental office, that is strictly C1?
This property right here is R3, residential. If you go up to
No, I'm talking about the immediate adjacent property with the dental office.
Yes, the dental office is zoned R1. Excuse me, C1. I'm sorry, commercial.
There's
C1.
no residential aspect to that particular property.
No, I don't believe so.
Just want to make that clear. Any other questions of staff by commissioners? All right, hearing none, is the applicant present? Would you please come forward, state your name for the record? And then pull the microphone down to you a little bit.
Good morning, Frank Ortiz, the applicant, as well as the property owner with my son. The property that we're proposing to develop in the parcel is a 11-unit complex composed of a triplex and 4 duplexes. Each one is approximately 1,100 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths with 2-car garage tandem. Also, I noticed that there's been a concern with parking. This property, we've met with staff, and they will have additional parking for the units, open parking, as well as guest parking to meet the planning and city code. It will have one entrance from Jamaica, and the units that will be put in that location, I believe it meets with, we had I forget what you call that meeting. I call it a one-stop meeting where we met with all the.
Oh, the neighborhood meeting?
Right. No, the one that I had with my architect, have with your staff and.
Oh, our pre-application meeting.
Pre-application, I believe that we have met all the requirements. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Morris, would you put up the site plan, please?
I don't believe I have the site plan here. I apologize.
In our
for that.
packet.
Oh, on my oversight. I'm sorry, I don't have it here.
Okay.
It's generally as he's proposing. Now, this rezone is not a planned development rezone, so it's not contingent upon that exact site plan. But that site plan is what he submitted and what he talked about at his neighborhood meeting. So,
He referenced it, and it's in our packet.
Correct.
That's why I wanted to pull it up for the record.
and I apologize, I don't have that here.
It's okay. Any questions of the applicant by commissioners? Okay, thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Appreciate
you.
it. Okay, I will open it up to the public. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Please come forward and state your name for the record, even though we already know it.
Hello, Nancy Campbell. My concerns is this little commercial node is one of the ones that I'd like to preserve. And as I spoke with the staff, city council and staff, a little bit more, yes, we've always needed residential. Yes, this general plan was from 2016, so it's approximately 5 years old. In the last 5 years, we've had massive developments within the community and around there. And again, the other ones that we were looking at are near a lot of commercial. That makes a lot of sense. But this little area right here could be a potential neighborhood concept that we had originally planned prior to the 2016 development. So again, I understand we need housing. Housing is really important, but we also need commercial to make this community move forward. Thank you.
Any questions of the speaker? Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item, either pro or con? Anybody at all? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion.
Raise my hand.
I'm sorry.
Oh, may I raise my hand on this, or?
Who's speaking?
Elon Seamus on Zoom.
Okay.
May I address? Or?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I currently own the building to the north of it, the dental office. And my concerns are that there are no commercial areas in that side of town. There are very few. There's a lot of housing developments in the area. And I'm just worried that one of the great aspects of my office is that people constantly refer to that is the only, commercial office in their neighborhood. And so that is a big factor for people coming to my office. And I mean, as a personal concern, I am worried that this 9-unit development will be literally 10 feet from my windows of my office. People's back windows will be looking directly into my property. On the other side, I was just being a good neighbor, and I wasn't going to really contest him developing that side and converting it. He's dropped the property 13 feet, making it a safety hazard that I can't even access the north side of my property anymore because it literally drops down 8 feet down and I can't access that side of my property. So there's a safety issue because I know the current codes are going to require the same flattening of this property as he wants to develop it. So my property will be undermined in both safety and accessibility, as well as view, aesthetics, and functionality. It'll be kind of blocked out, but it's also we need more commercial on that side of the. I live on the south side. There's cherry tree developments. There's hundreds of homes going up there, but there's really nothing on that side of town for people that live there. We have to travel 10, 15 minutes to the other side of town. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the speaker? Anybody at all? I did not get your name for the record, please.
Elon Seamus.
Elon Seamus.
Yeah, Elon.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Seamus. Appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Anybody at all? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this item and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends that the Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for Land Use Action 21-2880 for a zone change for 2860 Jamaica Boulevard South, Tract 2271, Block 10, Lots 8, 9, and 10, from limited commercial C1 to limited multiple family R3. And as a reminder, this item will be scheduled to go to the City Council at their August 10th meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we are at the table for discussion and or a motion. Commissioners? Mr. Nelson, I see you reaching.
Luke, I was just going to see if you could pull up the use table for the public to see.
All right, here's the permitted uses table with the R3 columns highlighted, if that's what you're looking for.
Okay. And then the C1 is,
Here.
yeah, it's right there. So there are these commercial nodes throughout the city. And some of the commercial nodes have 15-foot wide lots that have a 70-foot deep, parking in common situation. And you can't do anything with a 15-foot or 25-foot wide commercial lot. It's very difficult to do something with, and people don't really want to do anything with them. So the different pieces that were pointed out earlier on Arizona, Chemehuevi, Anita, those commercial nodes are, unless someone buys them all and marries all the lots together, it's very challenging to do something with those. This piece is a little different because it's pretty large, and it's also in a area where there is some commercial thriving. You got that little neighborhood Chevron there, and the Masons have the church. There's actually, between the Masons and the Chevron, there's C2 property there, so you could do storage or automotive. So there is future commercial in this zoning. I just think if we took away this piece that's large enough, going back to the use table, something that large could be used for, more medical. It could be used for a lot of different things that actually fit the zoning, and you're right there sandwiched in between the golf course area and everything in between, Mcculloch. So there's a lot of residents that could use something in that area that would fit in this commercial space. I for one, I'm totally for multifamily. I think that we need it, but this piece is a little difficult to let go. And that's my comments.
Question of Mr. Morris. Was that a property that was parking in common? Or is this property, was it part of the parking in common of that commercial node?
Yes, it is part of the parking in common. The rezone to residential would effectively eliminate the parking in common, obviously, because there's no need for a commercial parking lot because it's going to be developed as residential. But yes, it was part.
In other districts, like the Southgate Overlay District, when they went to remove a parcel and take it out of the parking in common, one of the requirements was that surrounding property owners had to agree, or a certain percentage of property owners had to agree to that. Is that not the case in this particular instance?
This case, you're right, it's not the same in this particular instance. This is a rezoning to get rid of the commercial zoning to go to the residential zoning. That parking in common concept was for commercial uses. It wasn't intended really for residential use like this. So way we've handled those is with the rezone, once the rezone is vested, that parking in common is no longer useful and it just goes away.
Where I'm going with this is, does that have an effect on the lone commercial property that is left, that is now standing there all alone without that parking in common?
Thank you. It's a very good question. The existing dentist office meets all the parking requirement minimums that are required for that use. So in and of itself, that stands alone and it meets the parking requirements. It has a parking lot in the front. They also have some additional parking in the rear. So that particular use is fine as far as the parking.
Could you address the comment that Mr. Seamus made that by zoning this, it's going to eliminate access to the back of his property?
There's an alley at the back. It has access already from that alley to those parking spaces in the rear. So maybe I misunderstood his comment. There definitely is access to the rear of this property.
Off of that alley?
I think my understanding was he thought on the north side, when they developed those multiple family projects, they cut the slope pretty steeply, and he was concerned about access from that side, I thought. But maybe he could elaborate if he has the opportunity.
Which you normally wouldn't have access from somebody else's property.
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other Questions, discussion?
Yeah, a couple of
Mr. Diaz.
couple of points. I like what Mr. Nelson was talking about. There's some areas where it does probably make sense to classify them. You know, if you have like a 15 or 25 foot wide, 80 foot deep lot, that's hard to develop. But when you have a full acre of property, which is at 43,000 square foot, you know, it's and it already has some usable industrial commercial stuff going on there that's viable. It's a good piece of land to possibly turn into a residential area. So I concur what he was saying. I think it makes a lot of sense to look at the places that are zoned commercial that, like, someone was mentioning there was one way up on Palo Verde, but in that area it probably wasn't feasible. It wasn't a viable commercial use. This one looks like it has some viability as a commercial piece of property. So that's just my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Anybody else? Comments? We are at the table for discussion and or a motion. Anybody? Any motion? And I can't make one.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve ID 212880, a request for a zone change for 2860 Jamaica Boulevard South, track 2271, block 10, lots 8, 9, and 10, from limited commercial C1 to one limited multifamily R3 with attachments.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Anybody? A second for purposes of moving forward? Ms. Melody? We have a second by Ms. Melody. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McGowan and a second by Ms. Melody to approve land use action 212880 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion? I would like to say something. In a previous meeting, a few meetings back, we had the same issue over on Anita, and I do believe that this is one of those viable locations, as Mr. Diaz and Mr. Nelson put forth. I hate to see this go. We already have viable commercial on adjacent, I shouldn't say adjacent, similar properties close by. And I think removing this from that commercial node is probably a mistake at this point. So that's enough said by me. Any other discussion? Mr. Bergen.
I agree. I think that with that commercial property to the north, that small commercial property, and the property we're talking about now has vehicle access pretty much all the way around it. And I think it should stay what it is right now. I can't see changing this to the residential.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, let's call for the question. Motion has failed. Sorry.
So, Commissioners, just as a notice, this will end up going to the City Council with a 7-0 recommendation against.
Okay, so the issue is not over at this point. It's just the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended no. City Council can vote otherwise. So at that time, good luck. Next item on today's agenda is, give me a second here, ID 212878. This is a request for a zone change to amend the zoning classification and district boundary of PD 0700200007, removing and rezoning 6535, 6545, 6555, and 6565 Showplace Avenue, tract 2395, lots 7, 8, 9, and 10, from C2 PD to a new C2 PD, including the following development standards. 1, prohibiting the allowable land use of self-storage / mini storage units, in essence. Number 2, allowing a maximum building height of 36 feet. And item 3, facing Highway 95 shall have architectural character and avoids large, unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. Mr. Morris, your presentation, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. For the other commissioners, other than the two new commissioners, this may seem a little familiar. This is very similar to a previous request that came forward. This request is for 4 lots here, London Bridge Road, north end of town, where London Bridge Road and Highway 95 come together. Of course, the airport's across Highway 95. There's some existing storage units and some under construction on Showplace Avenue to the east, to the west, excuse me. The current zoning is C2 PD. That's a planned development, and that whole area is currently zoned C2 with a planned development, which is special development and site plan approvals typically that go along with them.
Remember this one?
So here are 2 versions of the zoning map. This one's a little clearer. You can see this is all zone C2 PD. A little bit of a history. The original Havasu Auto Complex, which is what this is showing, was 37.38 acres. It slopes down from the east to the west. In 2007, this complex was approved for a planned development based on this site plan. The original plan development included the allowance of 36 feet building height for what became the Anderson Toyota dealership. The architectural features of that Toyota building exceeded the 30 feet, so they asked for an exception to up to 36 feet. And that went along, that exception applied to the entire site plan area here. So all these lots under the current plan development are allowed to go up to 36 feet that were part of that originally approved plan development. So the subject lots are here, lots 7, 8, 9, and 10. They are originally anticipated as car dealerships. Their current request is to rezone to any uses that are allowed in the C2 zoning district except storage units. This slide's a little different. It shows what's developed. The areas in blue have developed. So at the corner of Highway 95, and here's the Walmarts over here. There's a fast food and gas station at that corner. Then there's the Toyota dealership here. And then these vacant lots 4 and 5. And then there's some storage units under construction and built here on lots 6, 11, and 12. And then here's the subject lots 7, 8, 9, and 10. They're asking again to be rezoned to C2 plan development, not allowing storage units, and they're asking for a height exception to go up to 36 feet instead of 30 feet or 25 feet. And then that the no monotonous architectural features be at the rear. That's language is held over from the original plan development for this entire auto mall property. So if requested, if the rezone is requested, those lots asking to be rezoned from the existing current C2 plan development to a new one, again prohibiting storage units, allowing the maximum building height to be 36 feet instead of 30 feet, instead of 25 feet, and having the buildings that face Highway 95 have some architectural details per the proposed motion. With that concludes staff's presentation. Open any questions or comments Commission may have. Thank you.
Okay, we're at the table for discussion or questions of staff by commissioners. Anybody?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan.
This piece of property, we went through this a few months back, and the commission agreed that we wanted it to be something very special when people drive into town. We were very concerned about what's their first impression. Just like we had the same issue on the south end of town. When a guy wanted to build a car wash on that corner, we didn't allow it because we didn't think that was appropriate for the city. And we discussed this at length. And we mentioned then that we wanted it to be something that is very eye-appealing. A car lot, I don't think a car lot is the first thing they should see when they drive into Lake Havasu City, if that's what it's going to be.
You know, if I may elaborate a little bit more, I should give you a little more background.
Right.
You're right, this was originally part of a request you guys, this group heard a few months ago. When that request went on to the city council, it didn't get support. It was not voted on to be approved. This was these 4 lots plus the next item that we're going to hear at this meeting, lots 4 and 5. When those went on, the Planning Commission recommended approval. It went on to the city council. City council ultimately decided they weren't comfortable basically with the potential of storage units being that visible to the Highway 95. And so they didn't move forward. They did not approve the request. So that request went away. Now they're coming back and they're breaking it basically into 2 different parts. These lots 7 through 10 is one part, and the other part, which you'll hear next, is lots 4 and 5. So that's some background
Now,
information.
what are going to be on those lots? What business is going to be there?
Well,
Could be there.
in this subject, lots 7 through 10, they're requesting that any C2 uses be allowed there, all C2 uses except storage units. And that this site plan goes away. They don't have to do car lots with this general site plan that's shown here. They can do whatever they like as long as it's not storage units. And of course, it needs to meet the development code and whatever conditions the commission and or council place on this plan development rezone.
Dan,
Mr. Nelson.
if I may, it basically looks like what they're trying to do is resubmit the same thing, but with all of our comments and come back. So there wouldn't be any storage units on the frontage, which is what we were really worried about.
Yes, that's right.
And then the other thing we were worried about is having just metal facades coming into town. So what they're doing is they're coming back and correcting it the way that we want it, is what I'm sure the applicant can explain it.
Right, but the whole conversation back then was we were concerned about whatever goes there, it's appealing to the eye for first-time visitors that come to Lake Havasu from the north, which is where the direction most of them come from. So the buildings there, not so much back here in the back part, but what do they see from the street when they drive by?
Right, and I think that's what they're focusing on is, so they're not allowing storage units on that front piece, which is good.
Couldn't they have a car wash?
Yeah, I think that's in the zoning. Do you want to pull up the use table?
We can't really prohibit them from a whole lot of specific uses.
Right.
The storage unit thing was something that we addressed.
Right.
And they have taken that and gone further with it and saying allowing a maximum building height of 36 feet, prohibiting the allowable land use of self-storage or mini storage units, and that the buildings facing Highway 95 shall have architectural character that avoids large, unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. As far as, we can't go much beyond that for a zoning request. We don't have a plan submittal in front of us, so.
Well, and I want to kind of go back in time, and when we didn't pass the one that was the car wash, that one was because it was in a planned development, just like this one was, but it was all C1. So it was like commercial offices and stuff like that. So we didn't want, we didn't want the people that were going to invest in these big commercial offices to stick a loud car wash right next to them. So this is all C2. So you could have automotive, you could have all of these uses. And I think that it looks like to me like they took our comments and they're trying to correct it.
Can I add something?
Mr. Diaz.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last time you guys voted, I wasn't on the board yet, but it was only one person abstained. One person said no, everyone else said yes, right? Wasn't it 7-1? I think
That was me.
Okay.
I was the one saying no.
Okay, so it was approved by the zoning commission the last time, but this looks like, and I think that they're trying to have some good faith here, is they're saying, okay, we heard the one, and we're going to not put storage units, which I think is a great idea, not to put storage units there. But as you say, we can't pinpoint what you can. You're only going to put X on there. They have a menu of things to look at, but they're going this step beyond by making sure it's not going to be a repetitive, ugly facade. So,
well, again, going back in history, what happened was we had an applicant come in and say, I'm going to build the most beautiful storage units in town, and we're going to bring in a restaurant and this and that. And we rezoned, we approved it, and then they sold it. And then the person that built it built the cheapest storage units that you can possibly build. They're just painted metal. I mean, that's it. And they reduced the height restriction from 36 feet, or we reduced it from 36 feet to 25 feet. So they don't even tower. They're not even nice to look at. So, I opposed that, and I was the only one that opposed it, but city council had the same opinion.
Yeah. Bottom line, at the end of the day, we're a recommending body to the city council. And we recommended with one negative vote to go forward with this with city council. City council heard the negative vote, and they had some ideas of their own, kicked it back, and this is a resubmittal with those suggestions.
Yeah, so it sounds
Chairman?
like it's come full circle.
Ms. Kelly, or Ms.
I think it would be helpful to clarify. So when this request came to you a couple months ago, it also included lots 4 and 5, which are now been separated
correct.
from this request, and you'll be hearing those next. And those were the two lots where everybody had concerns about, and so they've separated those to address those specific concerns. So I don't know that there were many concerns of this request specifically, but it's the next request where there was a lot more conversation.
Yeah, and they,
Thank you, Ms. Gary, for the clarification.
in the last submittal also
Clarify.
to clarify, they didn't, it was the same thing. I don't think they had storage units on the front either.
They didn't.
So, anyway, full circle.
All right, we're still at questions of staff. Hearing no more?
If we
Mr.
approve
McGowan.
this now, and then we'll have no effect on what the facade or what it'll be directly on 95, what'll be there, signs, whatever. Does that meet the criteria, or do they have to get that approved? In other words, I'm not looking at an artist rendering showing me this beautiful building with water fountains and water coming out, something that's appealing.
They
Because we
don't,
don't have any idea what's going to be on 95.
they don't have the intent of building it, as far as I know.
Oh,
They have the intent of, there's nothing happening with these lots, so they have the intent of opening it, removing the PD, because when you have a PD, you have to build what's drawn out.
Right.
And it's not working. So they're coming back and saying, let's open it up a little bit more, remove the PD, and restrict not having storage units on there. So we're just trying to help. Now, they will have to go, I went through this last round too, and staff reached out to me, and they would have to go through a design review process.
well, that was my point.
And they also said, if you want to have any comments about the design review process, it is in the building code, the design review process, that you could review it, make sure if you have any comments to get it to staff and play our part. So everybody was really awesome about that whole discussion.
Okay, thank you. Chair.
Any additional discussion before we open it up to the applicant and/or the public? Okay, is the applicant present?
There he is.
Please come forward, state your name for the record.
I know his name.
Mr. Gordon? Yeah, but the recorder doesn't.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Gordon, Desert Land Group. Good to see you from the other side of the fence here.
Yeah.
I think, Luke, thanks for clarifying this. The one point I wanted to make, like Ms. Gary made, is that this go around, after going through planning and zoning the first time, we heard the concerns mainly again over storage. After going through city council, it was the same conversation. And so we stepped back, talked to the owners of the property, and kind of took a new fresh approach at this to try and appease those conditions and concerns that everyone had. So that included breaking this into 2 requests, okay? So the first request, like was explained, is about the properties that do front the highway in particular. And with these properties, I kind of, again, because we're explicitly, taking storage out of the equation here, we are asking to remove the existing underlying site plan, the underlying PD that's there. Now that PD, while it says the anticipated use was car dealerships, it was a C2 PD. So technically, anything C2 related could have gone on these parcels if they fit the site plan that was proposed. So that building right there, one of those buildings could have been a car wash today if someone had brought that forward, as long as it fit the footprint that was approved. At the end of the day, our goal with this, to Mr. Nelson's point, we've had a lot of people look at these properties. There are people wanting to do commercial development in town right now. The way this PD is put together, especially with this very detailed site plan, it makes it difficult for anybody to confidently move forward with a commercial development without that site plan going away, because most people aren't going to come in whatever they want to build and it's going to exactly fit what's on that site plan. I compare this to the Park Avenue thing we did a few years back, where same thing, there was a very detailed site plan over all those Park Avenue properties for a long, long time. And that restricted, from a real estate standpoint, the ability to get buyers to confidently move forward and buy those properties, because nothing fit perfectly into that site plan. Once that PD was removed and went back to just straight C1, it did free up, and we've seen a ton of activity, both from a sale and now a development standpoint on Park Avenue. Very nice projects too that are happening on those properties. So that's the goal here, is to remove the underlying site plan. To some of those concerns, we're leaving the original conditions in place, and that one is very specific about buildings facing 95 having architectural character, avoiding large unadorned facades, monotonous repetition, unrelated and inappropriate details. So not only is there a design review process in the code, now there will continue to be additional language there to help staff ensure that what gets built meets this criteria. So this request, again, just to remove really remove the site plan and revert to all C2 uses except for storage, maintaining those original conditions, and then obviously we'll talk about storage in the next item on the other parcels. Any questions I can answer about
Michael, that? It makes me feel very good, because you were involved in the discussion before, and we all thought alike at that point. And
yeah, and I don't
as long
think
as you're involved, I'm not going to worry what it looks like.
And for the record, that was Mr.
opinion.
McGowan.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't think in the previous conversations, like were stated, both here or at council, there was a lot of concern over this portion of the request originally. So again, I think this will help these properties move forward. I think you will see some good commercial development happen on these lots as time goes on here, and this will help get that done hopefully sooner than later.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any questions of the applicant? Anybody at all? Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak, please come forward, state your name for the record.
Hello, Nancy Campbell. Again, I want to remind everybody, we need revenues to move the city forward. And the way we do that is through sales tax revenues. And storage units are good, but they don't bring us a lot of revenues unless the community is buying vehicles. That does bring us in revenues. Obviously, the revenues do what? They pay for all of our salaries, our roads, our infrastructure. So again, I know the city is very concerned about everybody just doing storage units and residential, but again, we need funds to move the community forward. I love the new design plan that we did here. It's almost a multi-use concept, which will also bring revenues in the door and allow for people to store their high dollar vehicles, which also bring us a lot of revenues. So again, thank you guys for all the work that you did on this. I know it's been kind of confusing, but I think our whole community is kind of changing and learning, and that's what we're doing. And I thank you guys.
Any questions of the speaker? Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Anybody at all? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion, bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Honorable Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends that the Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for Land Use Action Number 21-2878, a zone change to amend the zoning classification and district boundary of PD 07-002-00007, removing and rezoning 6535, 6545, 6555, and 6565 Show Place Avenue, Tract 2395, Lots 7, 8, 9, and 10, from C2 PD to a new C2 PD, including the following development standards. 1. Prohibiting the allowable land use of self-storage, mini-storage, storage units. 2. Allowing a maximum building height of 36 feet, whereas C2 allows 25 feet maximum building height. And 3. The buildings facing Highway 95 shall have architectural character that avoids large, unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. And just as a reminder, this is scheduled to go to the City Council with your recommendation on August 10th. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of staff? We are at the table for discussion and or a motion. Ms. Ballard?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Ms.
I make a motion to approve ID 21-2878, a request for a zone change to amend the zoning classification and district boundary of PD 07-002-00007, removing and rezoning 6535, 6545, 6555, and 6565 Show Place Avenue, Tract 2395, Lots 7, 8, 9, and 10, from C2 PD to the new C2 PD, including the following development standards. Prohibiting the allowable land use of self-storage, mini-storage, storage units, allowing a maximum building height of 36 feet, and buildings facing Highway 95 shall have architectural character that avoids large, unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Ballard.
I'll second the motion.
And we have a second by Mr. McGowan to approve use action number 21-2878 with staff's recommendations. We are at the table for discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, congratulations and good luck. The next item on today's agenda, a request for a zone change to amend the zoning classification and district boundary of PD 07-002-00007, removing and rezoning 6520 and 6530 Show Place Avenue, Tract 2395, Lots 4 and 5, from C2/PD to a new C2/PD as follows. For the proposed lots 4B and 5B, number 1, adopt a submitted development plan, and number 2, allow all C2 uses. For proposed lot 5A, adopt a submitted development plan, Number 2, allow all C2 uses except self-storage and mini-storage units. Number 3, allow a maximum building height of 36 feet. And number 4, facing Highway 95 shall have architectural character that avoids large unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. This subject property is just south of the item you just heard. Again, it's at north end of town and near London Bridge Road and Highway 95 on Show Place Avenue. City limits is just to the west of it. Of course, the airport's across Highway 95. The property is currently zoned C2, planned development. And here's the planned development that it was originally approved for. It was for lots 4 and 5 in this planned development for this the proposed Autoplex Mall. Again, this plan was approved in 2007 by City Council. It's not really worked out, so their applicants coming back asking for to change it. It was part of a larger request at the City Council that included your previous item for lots 7 through 10, and the City Council didn't approve the previous request to rezone these lots 4 and 5 along with lots 7 through 10. So the applicants come back, split them, and now is split them up, and this is the second part of their request for the original 6 lots, just to break out these lots, and these are lots 4 and 5, which I think the council had more heartburn on with the storage units being on those potential uses on those properties. So again, here's where we are. The subject property is all of lot 5 and just a portion of lot 4. So there's a strip that goes along lot 4, and I'll put up a site plan in a minute here that shows it in more detail. But again, this is the originally approved development plan. The request is for lot 5 and a portion here of lot 4 to be removed from this development plan and this plan development and go into their own plan development. I think we've gone over the uses here. Again, the existing is the fast food and gas station, Toyota dealership, and the storage units here under construction and built on the lots here on the west side of Show Place Avenue. Here's their proposed development. This is the site overall. I'm going to go to the next slide. They've broken this into 2 different pieces. You heard a reference in the motion for lots 4B and 5B. That's here. And then lot 5A. So lot 5 was originally this northern portion here, and then lot 4 is south of that on this map. And they're only asking for a portion of lot 4 to be added to this. Their idea was because there's a drainage way that comes through here, they wanted to potentially add more useful land to that by adding a portion of lot 4 onto this back piece to get more potential for development in that property because of taking advantage or working around this drainage way that goes through the property. So lot 5 goes from Show Place Avenue all the way back to the city limits back here. They're proposing to split off the front portion of that and call it lot 5A. And lot 5A has some requests that they would limit no storage units there. They would have the buildings look nice facing Highway 95, or in this case, actually facing Show Place Avenue. So here's the proposed lots 4B and 5B. It's about 4.21 acres. They want to adopt this submitted development plan and allow all C2 uses on this property, on this lot 4B, 5B put together. And here's the lot 5A, which is the portion of the property that fronts on Show Place Avenue and is closest to Highway 95. For this property, it's about 1 acre. They would, again, adopt this proposed development plan, allow all C2 uses except for storage units, allow a maximum building height of 36 feet, and have the stipulation of additional character on those buildings facing Highway 95 or actually Show Place Avenue. Again, if it's rezoned as requested, if it's approved as requested for those proposed lots 4B and 5B, they'll want to adopt the submitted development plan. And I want to go back to that again, if you don't mind. part of this submitted development plan for Lot 5A is generally the layout of the buildings and then the enhanced landscaping. You'll notice there's a enhanced landscaping buffer along the street. Also, some enhanced landscaping behind the building between the proposed lot lines. So I'll go back up here. So this landscaping in here, landscaping here, a lot of enhanced landscaping and the building. And that the thought there from the applicant is that'll help buffer any potential uses back here, most likely storage units by this site plan. That would hopefully be more of a buffer for that perception of the site plan of the storage units being unsightly. So that's the request. That concludes staff's presentation. Open any questions or comments the commission may have. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start. And excuse my ignorance. What happens to Lot 4A?
4A would just remain as it is. It would be under the current plan development. So it would remain. So it would remain as this. If someone wanted to come in and amend that plan development to remove the rest of Lot 4 out of this original plan development, they could.
So Lot 4A now will remain under the existing PD?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff?
Yeah, Mr. Morris, can you go back to the...
Mr. Diaz.
Right there. So the Lot 5A is, maybe a silly question, is that a standalone businesses proposed against the storage, or is that going to be the office building for the storage unit?
You know, that's a good question. My understanding is these will be independent businesses, not part of the storage unit. But the applicants here, they can certainly address those comments as what's their intentions for those properties. But my understanding is these would not be associated with necessarily with the storage units. It would be retail or whatever uses are allowed in C2 other than storage units.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Questions of staff?
No.
I have a quick question.
Mr. Nelson.
On their new development plan, with, let's see, you got to go to the other plan too, but the lot to the north of 5B, what is that setback behind the buildings there? Which would be building A, I think. No, building
Well, in the
A. So what is there is a setback there. It looks like it's very minimal. What's the setback between that building and the property line there?
The minimum setback in the C2 zoning district is 0. It would depend upon the construction type of the building. You could build right up to a lot line in the C2 development zoning area. It would have to meet the building codes also. In some cases, if they don't want to have a certain fire rating on a wall, they can hold it in 10 feet, I believe, to not have to meet those more stringent building and fire code separation requirements. But per the zoning, they could build right up to the property line.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? All right, hearing none, is the applicant present? Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Hello again, Michael Gordon, Desert Land Group. Obviously, the second half of this original request, I think Mr. Morris presented it pretty well. Both again at commission level, from a few commissioners, we heard loud and clear the concern over, storage and how visible it being from the highway potentially was the main concern. And when we got to city council, it was the same thing. Probably the biggest takeaway from city council when there was really a no vote on it was the request for something like this. Can we take a piece of this and make it similar to the other properties along the highway? Can we create a buffer, if you will, with a portion of the property? I don't think that underlying concern over storage, you heard it from the public on the last discussion, in the back is necessarily a bad thing, but the visibility of it and the look of it from the highway has been the main concern. So working with landowners and on this proposed project, we took that little over an acre parcel on the front, which is Lot 5A. It is set up to be dedicated as a separate business, okay, as a different entity. Again, same conditions. We looked to self-impose the same conditions as the previous item we talked about. So not only is it C2, all C2 uses except for storage, but also with that additional condition over, you know, enhanced architectural features and elements, that long sentence that everyone loves to read right now, and the landscaping buffer and the things that you've heard presented for that. So that will develop as a separate parcel, consistent with the other parcels we just looked at in the last item that continue along the highway on the street. The storage component would be tucked in the back of this project. We feel that this proposal, you know, and just to clarify too as well, you asked about Lot 4A. In the original request, 4A was part of the request to abandon and allow for all C2 uses. And the reason for that at the time was this potential, you know, sliver, so to speak, coming off of 4A and being attached to what you now see on this site plan. So 5A would be that buffer in the new conditions that are there. 4A would stay per the existing development plan that's in place. In essence, still potential extension of an auto dealership or the existing auto complex that's there. And that would also provide that buffer in the future for storage as well. Any other questions or any questions I can answer?
Any questions of the applicant? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I have a question. So in your request here, it's asking for lots 4 and 5.
No, just for B, just that for what's called 4B. So just that grayed out portion on your screen is the only portion of lot 4 that would be affected by this. The balance, 90% of, or 95% of parcel 4 would stay under the existing, is not affected by this action, would stay under the existing PD that's in place.
So you're talking about 4B, 5A, and 5B.
Correct. Yes.
Because in the zoning request it says lots 4 and 5. It says a request for a zone
To amend,
change.
currently they are known as 4 and 5, which I believe is why it states it that way. But then if you continue to read it, it talks about 4B, 5A, and 5B. Right now, they're 2 parcels, so obviously.
We need to clarify that, or is it clear enough?
It's clear enough. I mean, the request as it exists today is 4 and 5, and what's being proposed is to divide it up differently into the A's and B's. And
To
so
adopt this plan.
to adopt
Okay.
what's being proposed today. So we couldn't advertise it as being A and B because it doesn't
Right.
currently exist. So
Right.
what exists is 4 and 5, and what's being proposed is to divide it up a little bit differently.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
To elaborate on the city attorney's comments, in the motion, it will be laid out as the lot numbers 4B and 5B and lots 5 and 5A will be in the motion. So that'll make it more clear when it goes to.
Okay, because
council
yeah, my
action too.
concern was if we do, if we adopt both lots, that we're not protecting the facade of lot 4. So I understand. Thank you for the clarification. The only other question that I had of the applicant is, so lot 6, if we jump back over to the adopted plan, the current plan. So lot 6, if someone built it that way, they would have parking right up against your.
6 is already developed as storage units.
Oh, that's the storage complex there. Okay.
So it's already built out kind of into that corner, and then there's some landscaping on that little funky triangle point right there. That's landscaped right now. And then I would say the storage units probably build out about to the extent of where the parking lot is shown right now.
So basically your storage, the back of your storage units would hit the back of
But
theirs.
right up against it,
Okay.
correct.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Anybody at all? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion, bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends that the commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for a zone change to amend the zoning classification and district boundary of PD 07-002-0007, removing and rezoning 6520 and 6530 Showplace Avenue, Tract 2395, lots 4 and 5, from C2 PD to a new C2 PD as follows. For proposed lots 4B and 5B, adopt the submitted development plan, and 2, allow all C2 uses, and 3, lots 4B and 5B shall be developed after or in conjunction with lot 5A. For proposed lot 5A, 1, adopt the submitted development plan, 2, allow all C2 uses except self-storage, mini-storage, storage units, 3, allow a maximum building height of 36 feet, and 4, buildings facing Showplace Avenue shall have architectural character that avoids large, unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. Now, you may notice there's, this varies a little bit from your packet in, for the first part. Staff reviewed this and suggested that condition number 3 may be appropriate. That deals with the timing of the development. What this item number 3 is, condition 3 for lots 4B and 5B. It says that we want the front property portion to develop with or before the back. The idea is if without this condition, it could be the storage units are built on the back portion of the property and there's nothing buffering them in the front. So this seemed like, I think this is the intent of the applicant anyway, but just to make it more clear, staff added that. So if you do agree with this recommendation, for your recommendation, you would need to add that item number 3 to what's already in your packet. Thank you. And again, as a reminder, this will go on, it's scheduled for the City Council's August 10th meeting. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go back to the applicant. Are you good with that added recommendation?
We've talked about it. We weren't anticipating that being part of this action, so I would prefer it wasn't. But if that's what is necessary, then we will be okay with it.
All right, I have a question for you.
Laying all my cards on the table there, but yeah, you know, that wasn't the intent originally when we applied, is that would have to be built first, but I prefer to proceed without that if possible.
There was a question brought up earlier as to that 5A lot being part of the storage units in the rear. Is that kind of what the concept would be? Is that the buildings there would be the offices for the storage units?
So the primary building there, no, would be a completely separate business, C2 business, okay? You can see the access, the only access to the back is through the middle, right where the label lot 5A is. So right, you would have your enclosure and your gate basically right on that red line. That smaller building right there, okay? Yes, the intent for that was to be kind of the facade, if you will, or the office, so to speak, for the storage units. It is under the 5A conditions, so it would architecturally have to fit those conditions that we talked about previously. So that would develop. So long story short, most of this parcel would develop. It would have to be developed in order to, you know, the drive lane, the parking, the landscaping, the building. Ideally, the actual business that occupies the larger portion of this, you know, if it didn't have to be a condition of going in first, that was our, you know, we didn't ask for that or state that in our request. I guess I'll put it that way. But most of the parcel from a site development standpoint will happen with the development of the storage. There isn't a user for that C2 building that's proposed on this site plan right now, although there are some architectural drawings for that and we are working on what that is going to be. So again, I would prefer to not have that be a requirement that that building has to be built first, but you know, I guess we're open to that conversation if that's what is requested.
I can see both sides.
I can as well, so I understand.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? All right, thank you, Mr. Gordon. All right, we are now at the table for discussion and or a motion. Here's Mr. Nelson.
I'd just like to discuss this a little bit. I think that staff did a great job putting this together to where we would pass it and the city council would pass it. And the applicant did a great job of the design. The only thing I could hope for is more commercial on this property. We do have a lot of people in this community that run small businesses that can't afford to buy a lot and build something. So I think, this small commercial building, if the offices are small and they can run a business out of the storage unit, this looks like a great concept to me. Your window tinting guys and small auto repair, those are all things that can happen in a C2 space. And there's only one other complex that I know of that's like that on Dover, where they would allow people to run small businesses out of these storage units. So I can only, suggest to the applicant that they allow in their CC&Rs for small businesses to, to maybe have a small office there in the front and run their internet business or whatever out of the storage unit, allowing places for small businesses to operate and maybe upscale a little bit, get out of their own garage, get out of their house. It'll take less traffic and clean up our yards if people aren't parking in their driveways to run their businesses, and they could go to a space like this. And I love the concept if it ended up that way. So I like the commercial in the front. I would love to have seen more commercial, but it looks to me like they've heard city council, they've heard our comments, and overall, it looks like a good plan.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Diaz.
I make a motion to approve ID number 21-2879 as per staff's recommendations.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Diaz to approve item number, I lost it here. Item number 21-2879 with staff's recommendations, seconded by Mr. Bergen.
And Mr. Chairman,
I was going there. Which staff recommendations? The one that was presented in the presentation or the one in our packet? That is, do we include item number 3 for proposed lots 4B and 5B?
The one in our packet, I believe, has what Mr. Morris was mentioning as far as developing first the front.
Nope, that was one that he submitted in his presentation. What's on your screen right now? In our packet does not have item number 3 for lots 4B and 4 and 5B.
Right. So for proposed lots 4B and 5B, number 1, adopt a submitted development plan, and number 2, allow all C2 uses. Number 3, lots 4B and 5B shall be developed after or in conjunction with lot 5A. For proposed lot 5A, adopt a submitted development plan. Number 2, allow all C2 uses except self-storage, mini-storage, storage units. Number 3, allow a maximum building height of 36 feet. And number 4, buildings facing Showplace Avenue shall have architectural character that avoids large unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. Item will go to the City Council on 8/10.
Okay, that was clarification by the maker of the motion. How about the maker of the second?
Second.
So you second that clarification? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table, and we are at the table for discussion. Any discussion on this item? Mr. Gordon, please come forward.
I guess I said what I said earlier, but I just want, for the record, I'm a little disappointed that in the staff report and what was presented did not have this condition. And then we get to a public meeting and staff decided to throw a new condition into the mix.
Yeah.
That would have never come up in this conversation today if staff had not added it last minute to this presentation. So I do oppose that, you know, for no other reason than that. And I guess I would ask that we redo this motion and stick to the staff report. But if you guys choose to adopt this, then I guess at this point we'll have to have that conversation with council.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Another point of clarification. Lot 5A, will it be owned by the same owner? Not that it makes a difference, but
No, 5A will remain under ownership. The owner of Lot 5A is not potentially developing 5B and.
so that would put an undue burden on 5A to.
I misspoke. I thought you were talking about 4A. 5A will be owned by the same owner, yes, as 5B. Okay, there is, for clarification, there is a contract in place. The person that's proposing to do this would own both 5A and 5B. Whether his intent is to always own 5A or not, I don't know. I can't speak to that. You know, I think his intent would be to develop or sell 5A for the development of a C2 use as required per this action. But I don't know that for sure, if he'll always maintain ownership of both.
My personal opinion, for what it's worth, is I think that puts an undue burden on the owner of 5A. We have accomplished what we wanted to accomplish by creating a buffer with that 5A lot. By stating that it has to be built first, probably creates an undue burden on that owner. That would be my opinion.
I would agree, and that's why I was caught off guard by that showing up here. Like I stated, we've had that conversation and certainly understand why we want to see that develop the way it's developed, and have already looked at potentially building something on that site. But I agree, it's a burden that I didn't think we would actually arrive at today. So again, I would ask that we, I don't know that we can at this point, but I wish that wouldn't have showed up. And for the record, I'm kind of, it upsets me that that showed up in this manner randomly on this presentation.
In all fairness, when
it's Mr. Nelson.
When that came up on the staff report, Jim did ask you about it. And you said, if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes.
No, I understand, but I wanted to make the point. The reason I came back up is that all of the communication to date until this showed up on the screen did not have that condition in it. So, you know, that's the public notice regarding this and the staff report and the things that went out, that was never part of this.
You were in agreement until
obviously as it showed up, everyone clearly was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So
I think that's why
it put
Jim
us in a bad
asked
spot.
you.
So I'm gonna, for 1 second, I'm gonna withdraw my motion.
Just a moment.
Okay.
Mr. Diaz.
I'm gonna withdraw my motion and kind of concur with Mr. Nelson said. I made that motion because I thought you had said that wouldn't come up, but okay. so I don't know
what's procedure, Ms. Gary?
It is cleanest now that we have a motion and a second to go ahead and go through with the vote. And you can always vote no if you feel that this isn't something that you want to vote for now. But it is the cleanest just to kind of, let's clear that vote and get it off the table and kind of restart the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. All right, we have a motion on the table. We have a second, and we are at the table for discussion of the motion. Any further discussion?
My question would be...
That would be Ms. Melody. Sorry.
It's Medley.
Medley, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay. My question would be, I guess, to the staff, was that adding in, was that to make sure that nothing would change with ownership?
The idea of adding that in, thank you for the question, was that the timing of the development, whether the commission felt it was something that was important to be noted, because it was sort of overlooked before the staff report, after the staff report, until the staff report went out, that the timing of this development may be something that the commission maybe want to be aware of, and whether the commission feels that that front portion is to be built to buffer the rear portion if if it's needed before the rear portion develops. That's the reason it's in there.
Did that answer your question?
I think so. So just to summarize what you're saying is, it's just to ensure that the intent is that that buffer is there prior to any other construction that's going to go behind it. That way there's no openness.
I would submit that it further ensures, but the intent is indicated in the recommendations. That clear it up or no?
Well, I guess my question was, with ownership, can that?
Zoning remains, runs with the land.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So if, can I ask a question?
Mr. Diaz.
So if we vote, because there's a motion and a second, and then it goes to city council, this will be updated accordingly before they vote on it, city council? I mean, based on this new addition?
Well, basically, we'd be voting on what you proposed. Your
Either yay or nay.
Your motion, a yay or nay, and
if it's nay, we can come up with another motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So
Okay,
if
I
this
got it.
motion
Yeah, it
fails
gets
for
a little
some,
confusing. Okay.
I think the intent of staff was for this to pass, you know. It's probably why they added that in there, but
I think we've already created the buffer with the lot.
Well, you have the buffer, but, you know, the problem is now, if you pull up the development plan, Luke. So you get the storage units built, lot 5A goes for sale. Do I want to build that? Because if we approve this, if we adopt this plan, you have to build that. Am I correct?
Yes, if you approve this development plan, then the development of 5A needs to be substantially similar to what's shown on this approved development plan. So the buildings would generally have to be located where they are, generally be about that size. There's some wiggle room for a little bit, but it needs to be generally what it's showing on this plan.
Unless they come back for a new PD.
They would have to come in, pay the fees to do.
Go for a new
through
PD to change the footprint, so to speak.
Of that tiny little lot. So we're getting what we want, you know, by creating that buffer, but, you know, it could end up being something that never gets built.
And
Mr. Diaz.
5B and 5A are the same owner? Is that what I heard? Right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Today, they're the same.
Today.
But they just want to build the storage units, not the, what
And
you see
I'm
from
not trying to be nitpicky here, but for staff, so you added that on there, so 5B would not be built without 5A being built first. You wanted to see 5A being built up first so that situation wouldn't occur.
Staff wanted to see that.
Yeah.
Mr. Gordon, did you have something to say?
If I may, I'd like to inject that I would ask that you deny the motion and reconsider. I would be okay with a condition. I mean, like I mentioned, the drive lane has to go in, the one building would have to go in. I would be okay with a condition that stated that all of the landscaping buffer proposed on this plan has to go in on the front end. I would just prefer that the building proposed not have to be built first, because at this point it would have to be 100% speculation in terms of the building and the interior build out of it. It would have to be a shell that we would hope to find a use for. So I would be okay with the site having to be developed up front, which with the landscape buffer and the small building and the parking lot and stuff going in as part of the storage development, that would help mitigate that initial upfront concern that's being talked about. But I would really prefer that the actual vertical structure of that building not have to be built as a condition.
The bottom line is the ingress and egress, the driveway access has to remain on that parcel. That's eating up a big chunk of the parcel, 5A.
Correct.
If somebody wanted to come back, say we did not approve this, and somebody wanted to come back and buy that lot 5A and come back through the process and change the PD to change the footprint of that property or the parking, et cetera, that would certainly be acceptable. We'd still be looking at that buffer and those same conditions of not having a bland facade
Correct.
on Highway 95.
Correct, yes. And I think you'll find because the driveway has to go in and the landscape buffer has to go in, I mean, you become really limited on what can be built.
There's not a lot that
it's
can be
going
done
to
differently.
be a building in some configuration like that with parking and, you know, as appealing as possible architecturally.
But to require that building to be built out ahead of the other project, I think is an undue burden, personally.
I agree, and I appreciate that. Again, I would ask that the commission denies the initial motion and reconsiders that. And again, I'm okay if we added or modified that motion to say something along the lines of the landscape buffer and the, you know, entry drive and things like that have to be built, but not the actual commercial building. Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant?
I have a question. So
Mr. Nelson.
If that was the intent, why didn't you put the property line to where all of the driveway for the drive lane for the storage unit was on your property and not on halfway onto the property that would potentially go up for sale?
Well, this is all, right now, all one parcel, okay? And so we're talking about a zoning action here where we're taking the front portion of the parcel and restricting it in a certain way, and the back portion of the parcel allowing something else. There is not a property line there yet.
Okay.
Obviously, if this is approved and is allowed to move forward after council, eventually you're going to see some sort of plat, condo plat, parcel plat come through that would put an easement over it would actually split off 5A, create the parcel for this other building. Because whether it stays one owner or not, it's probably two different business ventures. It's probably going to end up two different parcels, right? Two different business entities. But 5A will always have some sort of ingress, egress easement, and or a portion of 5A is going to be owned by the bigger parcel for access and parking in that little office building. So it's just the way the site worked out to lay it out that way. And I feel like we are providing a pretty good sized commercial building there with adequate parking as a future build out that will provide, I think, that buffer and that flexibility that the city's looking for.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, I'm sorry, Commissioner
Gary?
Diaz, you may withdraw your motion. You can withdraw it any time it's put for a vote, and the second need not be withdrawn. So if you do desire to withdraw your motion, you may do so.
You just looked that up, didn't you?
I did. I had to look at our rules. Sorry, we don't do that very often.
Okay, we are still at the table for discussion.
Just
Anybody?
for
Mr. Nelson.
I couldn't really see how big that building was. That building is 7,095 square feet. That would be desirable. So it looks small on the plan, you know. So I'm thinking nobody's ever
Good
going to
sized
build.
building.
Yeah, but that is a good sized building. So I'm on the fence. But that it's a good sized building that would be desirable.
Desirable for what?
Well, if you're looking for a commercial building right now at 7,000 square feet, that has the potential of being, 36 feet high, you're not going to find it.
But it might not be desirable for the person that's going to be required to speculate on that building.
Well, it doesn't sound like the applicant's it doesn't sound like they're going to build it. They could, but after I don't know. If we approve it, it's just going to be the buffer zone. So like the applicant said, they're maybe willing to do the landscaping.
We'd have to change our motion.
So we would have to change the motion completely to add,
Either deny this and move forward with a new motion.
which has already been done. He's already.
Well, we haven't had a withdrawal of the motion yet.
Oh, I thought we did.
Nope.
Okay, now I'm getting really confused. I thought we had to Since there was a motion and a second, we have to vote on this.
We don't have to. That was Ms. Gary's clarification. We can withdraw.
You may, but another option, you may withdraw. If you want to withdraw at any time before the vote, the maker of the motion may withdraw it. And the second doesn't have to second it. The maker of the motion can withdraw it, and then it's no longer
Okay,
under
I just
consideration.
withdrew my motion.
Perfect. So
Okay,
now the
motion
table
has
is
been
clear.
withdrawn. We don't have to have a second to withdraw the motion. So we are at the table for a motion and/or discussion.
I have a question.
Ms. Ballard,
So if the intent is to provide a buffer, so visibly you would not be able to see these storage units directly from the highway, and we approve this action with the buffer in place, but it's never built, what have we achieved?
we've achieved a buffer zone, just like we do with our R2, R3, R4, that sort of thing. So it's for the future. I don't see where we can mandate that they develop that parcel right now. That's not our job. Our job is the zoning.
I'm not talking about mandating. My question just was if the whole purpose was to hide the storage units from visibility on Highway 95, and we create a buffer zone where nothing is built, but the storage units are built, then you have nothing to shield the storage units from visibility from Highway 95.
I think the other,
It's time.
the other just point of discussion, and I would allow the applicant to come back up and talk about this too, but, you know, since this has come up, I would say the other option is you basically have 3 storage units on the end there that you may have to have unadorned facades and monotonous repetition, and you know that would kind of solve that problem if the 3 end units there, because the north side you're just backing up to buildings, so you don't have to worry about that. And then eventually when someone builds on lot 4, that's just going to butt up to that. But these, if nothing was ever built on 5A and you had some architectural design on the sides of those 3 storage units, then you know it would look okay from the highway.
Mr. Gordon?
Thank you. First of all, to Ms. Ballard's comment, a lot of this stemmed from our conversation with council where the request was really, I wish there was a parcel buffering storage, not a building built today to buffer storage. And so that's kind of why, again, we'd hate to speculate on a building and have it sit there empty. We'd rather set it up to have success in the future and have someone be able to build a 7,000 square foot, you know, C2 use on this 1 acre plus parcel here. Again, similar to what's across the street. To Mr. Nelson's comment, yeah, I would be okay with those conditions. I mean, I see us doing a nice job with these anyway, but to do that enhanced facade aspect to the end caps on these units that could be visible obviously until this parcel 5A was developed, we would be okay with that condition. I'd be okay with that condition as well as, you know, installing the landscaping and the landscape buffer on 5A. So to me, those 2 things would hopefully help mitigate that potential lag in development of 5A.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Yes.
Anybody else?
So can we make an amendment?
The motion's already been withdrawn.
Okay.
We can make a motion and state whatever we want for the
To
conditions.
include those other conditions then?
Yeah, we can add that condition or those conditions.
Okay,
Whoever wants to make that motion, if so.
okay. I would like to do that motion, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bergen had a question.
May I withdraw the motion?
Yeah. Okay, that's been done. Ms. Medley?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that City Council approve the previous motion to include the, I guess, the adding the architectural facades on the end units that are obvious from the road, and to also include the landscaping that you mentioned on 5A.
I'm not sure I understood the motion, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I would like to recommend that we approve 212879, a request for zone change to amend zoning classification and district boundary of PD 07002 00007, removing and rezoning 6520, 6530 Showplace Avenue, tract 2395, lots 4 and 5, from C-2PD to a new C-2PD as follows. For proposed lots 4B and 5B, adopt the submitted development plan and allow all C2 uses. And I think this is where we would also
Number 3 would be?
The 2 items that we discussed requiring the architectural changes to the end units so that they are not monotonous. And
You want to just use that language there.
okay, so that the buildings facing Highway 95 shall have architectural character that avoids large unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. Also would include any landscaping on 5A. Thank you. For proposed lot 5A, adopt the submitted development plan, allow all C2 uses except self-storage, mini-storage, storage units. 3, allow a maximum building height of 36 feet. And 4, buildings facing Highway 95 shall have architectural character that avoids large unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail.
Okay, that clarifies it. We have a motion by Ms. Medley. Do we have a second?
Wait, before there's a second, so she added the 5A, the landscaping into the proposed lots 4 and B instead of the 5A. So
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. This is a lot. So it might be best not to second this motion. And then can we take a brief recess and let staff help you just
Reword it.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then I think that'll be better.
5-minute recess.
A lot of information.
You did great. You did great. Yeah.
5-minute recess.
Well, back to work.
All right, let's bring us back to the meeting and back to the table for a motion on item number 21-2879. Ms. Medley?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve ID 212879, a request for a zone change to amend the zoning classification and district boundary of PD 07002 00007, removing and rezoning 6520, 6530 Showplace Avenue, tract 2395, lots 4 and 5, from C-2PD to a new C-2PD as follows. For proposed lots 4 and 5, adopt the
5B.
4B and 5B, adopt the submitted development plan, allow all C2 uses. For item 3, it would be buildings facing highway lot 5A have architectural character that avoids large unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. For proposed lot 5A, adopt the submitted development plan. Number 2, allow all C2 uses except self-storage, mini-storage, storage units. Number 3, allow a maximum building height of 36 feet. Number 4, buildings facing Highway 95 shall have architectural character that avoids large unadorned facades and monotonous repetition of unrelated or inappropriate detail. And adding number 5, all landscape buffers as shown on the development plan shall be developed in conjunction with the developments of lots 4B and 5B.
I second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion to approve ID number 21-2879 by Ms. Medley with stipulations, and it has been seconded by Mr. Nelson. Do we have any further discussion on the item?
I just want to congratulate Ms. Medley for jumping in there and the applicant for, doing their best to listen to city council and the community and protect our North Gate. I mean, that's really what this is all about.
Yep, that's a lot for a newbie to undertake, so congratulations. All right, any further discussion? Let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations. All right, we have two more items on today's agenda. The next one being, and we're not going to get rid of Mr. Gordon, I'm sure. The next one is ID 21-2873, a request to rezone approximately 157 acres of the Havasu Riviera specific plan to include Tract 2401, lots 28 through 49, from multiple family residential R-M to multiple family residential / planned development, which is R-M/PD. Area 4A from agricultural preservation to A-P, or A-P, to mixed use general plan development, which is MU-G/PD. Area 4B from architectural preservation, A-P, to mixed use neighborhood plan development, which is MU-N/PD, to allow a maximum building height exception of 40 feet, and areas 5 and 8 from agricultural preservation, A-P, to multiple family residential plan development, R-M/PD, to allow the following exceptions: primary building height of 40 feet, minimum lot width of 50 feet, minimum lot depth of 100 feet, minimum lot area of 6,000 square feet, and minimum reverse corner side yard setback of 10 feet. Mr. Morris, your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you so much. The subject property here is known as Havasu Riviera. It's within the Havasu Riviera development, which is south side of town, Highway 95, at a proposed signal light that hopefully we energize soon, provide access via Havasu Riviera Parkway, and then there's a Copper Canyon Drive, I believe, that goes down from the Havasu Riviera Parkway into the subject property. The current zonings are RM and then some AP, default holding zonings for the area. This is the existing approvals for the area. So the properties that are already developed that are subdivided and developed are this portion up here. I believe it, I forgot what they're marketing it as, but this is a residential development. And then there's a couple more residential subdivisions in areas 2 and 3 here, the original approved plan. And then the rest of this doesn't have zoning under the current designations that we have now. Back in the day, it was zoned, it was determined to be mixed use and R4. And so the R4, which is their residential component, was for originally these areas 4, 6, 7, and 8 here. And then there was a mixed use element for number 5. So what they're proposing looks similar to this, but a little different. I'll go to the next page. So here's the subject properties here outlined in red. You'll notice that 4 and 5 here are still 4 and 5, but what was 5 now, they're asking that that mixed use component be flipped over here on and put into area number 4, and the area number 4, which was residential, be moved on to area number 5. So they're asking that they flip those two types of uses to have the residential here and the mixed use in area 4. Part of the request also involves the existing subdivision. There's a couple arms of some cul-de-sacs up here in area 3A. They're asking that that be rezoned to RM still, but add an exception to allow up to 40 feet in building height there. Under their current designation there. I believe they're allowed up to 60 feet, but they're asking that this be a 40-foot designation. And then have the 40-foot designation also be allowed in lots, their areas 4A and 4B with a mixed-use portion. And then the remaining areas 5, 6, 7, and 8, they're asking that go through to a residential component, that's RM, which normally allows 30 feet, but they're asking for an exception to go up to 40 feet in those areas. And then some potentials for reducing the minimum lot sizes, width, length, and overall area because of the challenges of the topography in that area. They're looking to have some of those lots, and then they can elaborate more, the applicant can elaborate more, be allowed to be smaller than what's allowed, required in the RM, which is 7,200 square feet with a 120 depth and a 60-foot width. But they're asking for some potential relief from some of those dimensions given the topography in that area. So it looks very similar to what was originally approved. They're flipping the mixed use. They're switching the mixed use portion out of 5 into 4 and putting the residential component into 5 in this request. And then they're asking for a height adjustment up in the existing area 3A, and then keeping the rest of this down here as residential plan development. So hopefully that helps explain the situation, open any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, we are at the table for questions of staff. Any commissioners with questions of staff? All right, hearing none. Is the applicant present? Please state your name for the record.
Hello again, Michael Gordon, Desert Land Group. I think Luke did a pretty good job of explaining the overview of what's going on. Just to kind of back up a second, the Riviera project's been in the works, as most of you know, for a long time. We are now, from a development standpoint, through the first 3 phases, as he alluded to, 1, 2, and 3 on this map. Have gone through this process before that we're going to talk about right now. Again, a lot of this goes back to in 2008, there was a specific plan put together. The city doesn't do specific plans anymore, but the specific plan kind of outlined the whole proposed development. It outlined these bubbles, it outlined the proposed uses, and at the time in 2008, the bubbles were broken up into, some of them were mixed use and some of them were had zoning that came with it, with an R4 multifamily zoning district. As the project evolved, when we came back in the past couple of years, we started with parcel 1. We went through a little zoning update to the specific plan back then, where we took, which was just a straight mixed use parcel at the time, and we broke it into a combination of mixed use general and mixed use neighborhood for the ultimate development that is now built out there. About a year later, parcels 2, 3 came together. Again, at the time, parcel 2 was mixed use and parcel 3 was a multifamily. We rezoned both. I say rezoned, part of this is really an update to the overall zoning. So again, the specific plan from 2008 had zoning classifications entitled and designated as mixed use, just straight mixed use, and R4 at the time, which was multifamily. In 2016, when the zoning code changed, the definitions of mixed use, the definitions of multifamily changed. And so each time we've done this, we've not been really going after new zoning. A lot of it's been updating to the new zoning code, as well as making a few adjustments. So again, parcels 1, 2, and 3 have been handled in the past. Those 3 are developed today, and we're continuing to move forward with the project. So we're here in front of you today to bring the balance of the project to you. That's parcels 4 through 8, including one small modification to a few of the lots in parcel 3. And on the next action, you'll see the preliminary plat for all of this, which will outline the proposed lot configuration and density for all of these parcels. As Mr. Morris alluded to, a couple adjustments in the specific plan. Parcel 5 was mixed use. Parcel 4 was multifamily. We've kind of flopped those two. There's not a huge demand for the mixed use component right in the middle of the community, so it's gotten smaller. But it is still there, and it will house, and it'll be more in the back of the community versus in the front of the community. So parcel 5 is asked now to be the multifamily, and 4A to be 4A and 4B to be mixed use. Again, similar to parcel 1, part of it being mixed use general, part of it being mixed use neighborhood. Parcels 6, 7, and 8 are still remaining multifamily, just updating the designation from the old code of R4 to the new code of RM, with a few exceptions or conditions there. Wanted to just talk about those. Height's always a concern. In the specific plan, the mixed use bubbles that were entitled came with a 60-foot height allowance, if you will. We're not building anything 60 feet out there, even in parcel 1, which does still have the 60 feet of height. We on the development end have actually restricted that down to 40 or 44 feet just to keep things in better residential scale out there. But the request here on some of these parcels to go above 30 and to go up to 40 is really just that, to give people on the residential front that flexibility to get that, you know, with RV garage heights and build heights and stuff, it's hard to get everything sometimes inside 30 feet. And especially if you're in an area where you're trying to terrace things and you're trying to get, you know, views, or you're trying to get a rooftop component that has views and sees over homes in front of it. And so that's where the height request goes. So on some of the parcels, it's actually lowering the height that is entitled today from 60 down to 40. And on some of the parcels, it was just straight R4 without a height exception. We're asking for that height exception. And to clarify how that works, and if you're familiar with the community, some of you are, there's very few properties that we, from the development standpoint, allow to go beyond 15 or 16 feet. It's really just the back row. It's on the high points of the property. It's in the back row of some of these parcels. This property has a tremendous amount of elevation change. So if you've been out there and seen the land plan and how things are developed, everything's kind of terraced in different ways. So we're always going to be more critical from the development end as to where heights are allowed and where they're not. So for example, even if, you know, if this was approved and parcel 8 was allowed to have 40 foot of height, I can tell you there's only going to be maybe 10% of those parcels or properties that we will allow to go up to 40 foot of height. So when we do our developments, the lot exhibits, the CC&Rs, the deed restrictions that come on the property are very specific lot by lot as to how tall some of these structures can be. And so we're reserving that height allocation, if you will, to certain areas where they're in the back, they're not affecting anybody, and they sit up above everybody else looking over the homes below them. So that's the reason for the height exception request. And then the other little nuances there, lot width, lot size, lot depth, corner size, really, again, back to the terrain and the topography. We're dealing with some pretty rugged stuff and trying to go in and create this mixed-use neighborhood that we're developing. It has led to a lot of unique shaped parcels. And so the request just gives us that flexibility that, you know, while we may have a lot that's not necessarily 100 foot deep, we're going to offset that. It's usually a lot wider, or it's an odd shape, or it has something else going on. Still a very buildable parcel from a RM zoning designation. You're still getting plenty of square footage. You're still getting a good size home. It's just the configuration of lot lines and things have turned out to be a little unique out here. So those requests are just to give us that flexibility. You'll see in the preliminary plat in the next item, the configuration of those. I don't know, probably 95% of the parcels actually do meet the RM standards. So the requests that we're asking for, when you really study the preliminary plat, apply to just a very, very small portion of the lots. With that kind of quick summary on everything, I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide any clarity I can on this for you.
Okay, any questions of the applicant? Anybody at all? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gordon.
You're welcome.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Anybody at all? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion, bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends the Planning Commission recommend approval of ID 21-2873, the rezoning of approximately 157 acres of the Havasu specific plan to include Tract 2401, lots 28 through 49 from multiple family residential RM to multiple family residential planned development RMPD, Area 4A from Agricultural Preservation, AP, to Mixed Use General Plan Development, MU-GPD. Area 4B from Agricultural Preservation, AP, to Mixed Use Neighborhood Plan Development, MUN-PD, to allow a maximum building height of 40 feet. And areas 5 through 8 from Agricultural Preservation, AP, to Multiple Family Residential Plan Development, RMPD, to allow the following exceptions. 1, maximum building height of 40 feet. 2, minimum lot width of 50 feet. 3, minimum lot depth of 100 feet. 4, minimum lot area of 6,000 square feet. And 5, minimum reverse corner side yard setback of 10 feet. And as a reminder, this will be scheduled to go to the City Council with your recommendation on August 10th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Gordon, are we okay with those recommendations? Okay, thank you. All right, we are at the table for discussion and/or a motion by commissioners.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Nelson.
ID 21-2873 with staff's recommendations.
Perfect.
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. Nelson, a second by Ms. Ballard, to approve ID 21873 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion on the issue? Hearing none, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations. The next and last item on today's agenda is ID 212874, a request for a preliminary subdivision plat for Havasu Riviera, assessor's parcel number 109-19-008, phases 4 through 8, creating 340 lots and private streets on approximately 157.17 acres. Mr. Morris, your presentation, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. This is a companion piece to the previous rezone request. It's the same subject property except for the existing subdivision portion. So the subject area is here in the Havasu Riviera area. The current zoning was rezoned per your recommendation to various zoning districts for that property. Here's the development plan that was proposed in the rezoning. This is the entire area. Here's the preliminary parcel plat for the property. If you can visualize it here, here's the area, the main road that comes in, and it's called Copper Canyon Drive. And there's the different areas. This was the area 4. The area 5 is over here. And then 6, 7, and 8 go down this to the south on this property. Phases 4 and 7 in here include about 57 lots. This is all going to be private streets throughout. Phase 5 will include 61 lots and drainage parcel and private streets. Phase 6 will include about 126 lots, private streets and drainage parcel. And then 7 is over here, and then 8 would be about 98 lots with drainage parcel and private streets. This meets the intent of the previously approved rezoning, and it does have some interesting, given the topography in that area, it has some interesting aspects. There's a lot of washes and steep slopes in here. There's a lot of elevation change on the site, from 490-foot elevation up to 680, so there's almost 200 feet of rise on the property overall. In situations like this, where we call hillside development, there are some relief that the subdivision code allows to help mitigate the change in elevation in the steep slopes in areas like this. Many of these residential lots front on private streets where they have 2 frontages, so the street comes through and the lot goes we call a through lot. In this case, we're saying that seems appropriate, is okay because of the topography. There are some other lots in this development that offer that same thing where they front on two lots. The applicant is utilizing that exception through the subdivision code, given the topography of the site, to allow things like that. The overall specific plan for Havasu Riviera stated that the residential lots number count would not exceed 1,048. To date, the city has approved 218 residential lots, and this will include, this subdivision will include 340. So that's just a 550 or 560 lots overall, which is well under the 10,000 maximum that they were allowed. With that, concludes staff's presentation. Open any question or comments you may have. Thank you.
Okay, any commissioners have questions of staff? Hearing none, is the applicant present?
Hello again, Michael Gordon, Desert Land Group. Luke explained it pretty well. Yeah, we are dealing with some pretty intense topography out there, which creates a really unique development, but obviously a challenging one as well. So that's what results in some of the odd shapes we talked about previously in terms of lot sizes, as well as the configuration of streets and things. I think he summed it up pretty well. Happy to answer any questions. We're excited to continue to move this project forward. So this zoning and this preliminary plat approval will allow us to start moving forward with council on each neighborhood specific and keep the momentum going out there. So any questions I would be happy to answer.
I'll start.
Yeah.
How far away are you guys from public report?
So this is dealing with parcels 4 through 8. We're actually grading on 3 of the parcels right now with an at-risk grading permit. We're continuing progress, getting the site ready. We're working on engineering and everything. Our goal right now is to bring 2 more neighborhoods of development to the market before the end of the year.
Okay. And how final is this plat?
It's pretty tight. For example, 3 out of the 5 that you see there were already in full improvement drawings and final plat drawings, and moving forward in anticipation of this getting approved. So yeah, the drawings you see here are accurate to our development plans and what we're working on every day right now to keep this moving.
I'm just getting that on the record.
Yeah, I know you're going to be studying this closely later.
Is there anybody else that has questions of Mr. Gordon? Okay.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Gordon. All right. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this final item? Anybody at all? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of the meeting or this item and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends that Land Use Action ID 21-2874 for a preliminary plat for Havasu Riviera, APN 109-19-008, phases 4 through 8, creating 340 lots and private streets on approximately 157 acres, be approved with the following conditions. 1, street names shall be added to the plat for staff review and approval. 2, dead-end streets must provide cul-de-sac bulbs. 3, preliminary calculations for stormwater retention and detention shall be provided and reviewed by staff. 4, existing topography data shall be added to the plat. 5, provide sewage disposal and water treatment statements and deed restrictions for the properties. Thank you.
Okay, we are at the table for discussion and or a motion, Commissioners. Anybody? Mr. Diaz?
I move to approve ID number 21-2874 as per staff's recommendations.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve ID 21-2874 by Mr. Diaz, a second by Mr. McGowan. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations. All right, at this time of the program, it's the call to the public. It's where anybody of the public can speak to the commission on any subject. Is there anybody that would like to address the commission? Call to the public. Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the call to the public. Future meetings, Mr. Morris.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, July 21st, we have no items, so that July 21st meeting's been canceled. August 4th, our meeting room has been taken from us, so we will not have a meeting on August 4th either. The next regular scheduled meeting will be August 18th. We will have items for August 18th.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you to the newbies. We are adjourned.